For more information about Microsoft Webcast, please be sure and visit us at www.microsoft.com/webcast. Without further delay, I'd like to welcome you again to our Msdn webcast and give the floor over to our first presenter, Lynn Langet from Microsoft. Take the floor, Lynn.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our multi-part series on SharePoint for developers. If you're joining us for the first time, hello. And if you're back again, we're happy to be working with you. This series is targeted specifically for you as developers. And we right now have 12 different parts to it. The information about the webcast series is available on both of the presenter blogs, which is for me, blogs.msdn.com, SoCalDevGal, and for my co-presenter, Mike Benkovich, on his blog, www.benkotips.com. One of the things we're trying to do in these presentations is allow you the ability to ask questions. And the reason that there are two presenters is we've had a multitude of questions during the webcast. So we really encourage you as you're viewing to shoot us your questions, and we'll make every attempt to answer them during or shortly after the webcast. Mike and I are part of the national presentation team, and our sort of regular job is to go around the United States and give presentations on developer topics. You can also see information on our presentation schedules on our blogs. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
All right. Thank you, Lynn, and I want to welcome everyone to today's webcast presentation. If you've been to any of my webcasts, you know I like to do slides and figure out who's going to, or do poll slides to figure out who's with us today and what kinds of things you've been doing. So today is no different. I'm going to just put that up there. If you're a developer, maybe you just play one on TV. If you could go ahead and just let us know who we've got with us today. Today's topic is talking about Access 2007 and how it fits into this whole Windows SharePoint services thing. So there's going to be a lot of talk about how Access works and how it can be used by end users, and also how we can take that application and make it into something that is a little bit more supportable, allow us to do more collaboration, and basically get into building a system that is going to help support us when we're going out and building our business solutions. So it looks like we've got just about all of the answers on that slide. So I'm going to just jump down here to where we've got an overview of this webcast series. And this is actually the slide that we're going to do at the very end. If you've been into this webcast series so far, we've done the SharePoint server as a development platform. We dived into the SharePoint Designer 2007. Part 3 is rescheduled. We're actually going to be doing that on Friday this week. So we'll be coming back and we'll actually do a conversion of a website into SharePoint services and talk about what's involved in making the master page fit into something kind of new and unique. We're today talking about SharePoint services and Access 2007, and then we've got the rest of these which are going to follow in about a one per week kind of a basis. So with that, let's talk about today's content. Today we're talking about collaborative data applications, and that is the SharePoint piece. And specifically about how you can use Access to very quickly go out, prototype, build something, and create a rich client that can be used to help us facilitate a nice end-user experience without having to know a heck of a lot about writing hardcore code. It helps if you've got some experience with SharePoint services. It helps if you've got some experience looking at and using Access. So based on those two things, the only other one is that you got an interest to see what's possible with this technology. And to be honest, when I was looking at the content that I was looking for, which gave me the idea for what this webcast is going to be, I was quite surprised at just how well Access fits into the bigger picture and giving us a better understanding of how SharePoint operates and how we can use its collaborative capabilities. So let's talk about that. Let's dive into the agenda. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about collaborative data applications. We'll talk about what type of applications this fits and where does Access fit into the picture. We'll talk about the rich client and server and how that works. And then we're going to do quite a bit of demonstration. And that is going to be really looking at how we can go out and really use this. And our demonstrations are going to be going from Access into SharePoint into different ways of using the Microsoft Office environment to really power up the solution. So collaborative data applications, this is kind of the first point where we talk about what types of applications are out there that businesses generally go out and build and use. And if you think about it, a business is going to have a number of different kinds of applications and the type of complexity that you get for a given application. Say it's a line of business, there's going to be a relatively few number of applications out there that fit that curve. And actually the curve on here should look a little bit like this. So you've got kind of a bell curve where the number of applications that are fitting the line of business, you're not going to have a lot of them that have that kind of complexity, but you will have more applications that are tracking simple things like lists of, for instance, the lists of webcasts. How many webcasts of a given type do we have, or the number of people who attended. Those list type applications generally are fairly simple, maybe standalone data sources, but the trouble is that when they get created, they get created in ways that they're not necessarily in the most supportable kind of a framework. And the challenge has been, how do we make these simple applications more enterprise, compliant? One of the challenges is just making sure that data doesn't exist only on a desktop, and if that desktop goes down or is shut off at night, that the business doesn't stop running. So what we are talking about is looking at how Access can be used to create these applications like the lists and the tracking, and then be able to put them into an environment where we can really make sure that we're getting our backups and everything else working. So let's take a look at the two technologies of today. SharePoint Services gives us collaboration and workflow. It gives us the ability to go out and create lists of information of entities and items and data that is going to be backed up. It's going to have security applied to it that IT can really go out and manage, because all of that data that's created is stored inside of a common data store like SQL Server or whatever has been configured for SharePoint to do its backups and recovery. The nice thing is if I'm doing a backup, if I have to go and restore to a point in time, I can do that completely within the SQL Server aspect of SharePoint. Access, on the other hand, is easy to use. It's been out there for a long time, and a lot of people do go out and use it to create quick solutions to challenges they don't have the time to wait for a complex application to come back. A lot of times Access will go out and connect to many different places to consolidate information to give us a single reporting solution for the data that we're looking at. Access 2007 brings along some great capabilities in 2007 that are new. One of which is the ability to leverage the Office environment to work with the data in pretty nice ways. For instance, one thing that we can do now is we can actually create a form in Outlook that we can send off through email and get the data back and be able to work with the information from there. Also, it allows us to put the application up onto the SharePoint site, and then anyone that we grant access to that SharePoint site would be able to work with the data directly. And the Outlook application or the Access application becomes a rich client that is accessing the data through linked lists of what's on SharePoint. And there's three main areas or groups of users that are impacted by these new benefits. You have the end users who are able to go out and build applications. Power users who are taking advantage of the ability to create different macros and repetitive tasks to do different types of content management, data management, all the way up to the professional developers and the IT the IT management team to allow us to work with a server-based management of the data. We can develop managed code that will allow us to do interesting things with the data. But it really gives us the opportunity to leverage all of this stuff in our application. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out and we're going to create an Access application here. And the demo application we'll go out and create is going to be a sales pipeline. And what this does is it tracks opportunities for sales that are going on. We have opportunities, customers, and employees. And what the Access application really consists of is a set of tables that have columns. In SharePoint, we call those lists. There's also forms and reports that Outlook then, or Access then allows us to go out and work with. So let's dive into our first demonstration here.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mike, as you're preparing for the first demonstration, we have one question in the queue here to answer.
Sure.
It says, how do I migrate existing Access-based application data structures to SharePoint?
I will show you that in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I thought you would be addressing that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, we'll be doing that here in just a few minutes. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to go into SharePoint and I'm going to create a place where we're going to do our demonstrations from. And I'm just going to kick this off while we're doing other things here. So I'm going to go out and create a site here. And this is going to be our demonstration site for the SharePoint, or for the Access. So I'm going to call this demo, and we'll just put the URL down here to be demos, our demo. And we'll just do a simple site collaboration type of a website. Using this is our location where we're going to create a document library that will be where we're going to upload our data and work with the Access information at. Now, for those of you who have been working with Access in previous versions or have not seen Access at all, there's a brand new user interface and look and feel to the new Office Access 2007. When you go out and start up Office Access, the first thing you'll notice is that it comes up with a whole set of different templates that you can use to create solutions very quickly and easily. And we can go with the local templates that are on your own machine, or you can go out onto the Office Online and download and work with business solutions from the Office Online site. So for instance, if you have a contact or a call tracker or marketing projects, you can work with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my local templates, and what we've got here is a sales pipeline, and we're going to just create a sales pipeline database, and we'll call this our demo 1 database, sales demo, and the template gives us a number of different entities, forms, and other objects that we can use for tracking these open opportunities. And when you look at the actual interface, you'll see that we have the ribbon at the top, which is familiar with the other ribbons, the other Office products, such as Word and Excel. You've got the Start menu where you can go out and you can see under the Start button, we've got the ability to email, to manage the data, work with printing data, save this out as something different, publish, etc., as well as get into the Access options so you can set your preferences. But then we have this thing that is our navigation pane on the left. The navigation pane allows us to go out and see the different areas of the application, as well as all the supporting objects. And in here you'll see we've got customers, employees, and opportunities. If I were to go out and say pull up our, just take a look at the main form, the opportunity list, I can go out and I can create a new one, call this Msdn events. And then as I go through, it's actually going to go out and open up the different lists that allow me to configure information about this. So by doing this, I can go out and I can create data and applications that are going to model a complete solution for a lot of different business problems. I'm going to create a different one, and what I want to do is to press escape here, and we're going to create a new issue list. I'll call this issue My Issues. Some people may think I've got a lot of issues. I don't think I do. And this is actually going to take us out to an issue database that we'll then use as a basis for our demonstrations we're going to do today. Inside of Access, once I've got the issue database downloaded here, you'll find that the forms, reports, and objects and entities from within Access itself gives us a pretty nice starting place for the application we're going to be building off of. So here's a list of issues. We're going to say create, add data for demos, and I'm going to assign this to Mike. And when I tab out of here, we'll go out and add the items in this list. And I'm going to add Mike here, and my last name is Benkovich, Microsoft. And if you want to send me an email, it's mike.benkovich@microsoft.com. And that's my job title, so let's just cut and paste that. Paste that here. Save and new. Let's put in another one. Let's put Lynn into the database so we can assign stuff to her. Lynn Langet. And Langet. Is that the right email, Lynn?
Let me take a look. Yes, that's correct.
So we'll save, and maybe we'll have another one, just a general one for Msdn. Events. Save and new. And I can create as many entries into this list as I want to. But the thing is that then I can go out and I can assign this activity to different places. And you can set a priority of high, low. Say write new content for next week. We'll assign this to Lynn. And we'll make this a priority of high. We'll have another one. Check schedule for stuff. And we'll put this to Mike. And basically you can add more stuff and assign these items out as you need to. And the nice thing is that this data is going to go out and give us our start spot. I can go out and I can view open issues and view a report of what issues are open out there. I can also go over to my ribbon and I can explore what kinds of functionality I can do from the different spots within here. Notice that I've got different tabs. So the issue list has got the list of issues. I've got the open issues, which is a report. I can go through and I can create new reports, for instance, if I want to. One of the nice things about Access 2007 is that if I'm going to go out and create a report, say I create the report wizard where we put title, what's assigned to, what our priority is, maybe our status, and due date, and if I've got some comments, maybe I'll add a description. Click on next and finish. We'll do some grouping here by, we'll just leave that out. Click on next. And then you can pick a style that you want to use, so you can use a metro or a module. Give it a nice look. Here's my open issue report. And click on finish, and it's going to preview the report, and here's what the report looks like. One of the challenges, or one of the things that you can do is when you're looking at the report, is I can switch to the layout view, and it'll show me exactly how things are laid out and what the size of different fields are. I can also see that there is a page break, so I can tell whether or not the report items are going to actually fit onto the report itself. Now, one of the other things that you'll notice is that the actual report is in browse mode. So when I'm going out and designing this, I'm actually designing it in where I can see the data. And that is a nice thing to be able to do because a lot of times when you've got, when you're in previous versions of Access, you'd be in a view that looks a lot like this, where you wouldn't necessarily be able to get a good feel for what that final report was going to look like. But with the browse and design, or the layout and design and browse mode, lets you really make sure that everything is going to fit into this the way it's supposed to go. So given that, we can use, up on the top you'll see under the report layout tools, we've got the ability to arrange different items. We've got the page setups. We can also go to the format. We can take, for instance, if I have a column and I wanted to do some grouping on that, I can right click and say let's do a grouping on priority. So in this case, all of the priorities are going to be giving us a particular way we're going to do this, do the format. And I can take that format on grouping, and I can apply some conditional formats. So I can say that if the field value is between or is equal to a particular value, say, quote, say it's a high, I can bold this and set a color to it, say red, to make sure that we can see that that is going to be the format. And then that formatting color, that conditional formatting, then will flow through for this access report. So inside of Access, you've also got the ability to go into, let's close out the report. We can also go to the external data piece, and we can save that, close this. Underneath the external data tab, right now we've got all this information is sitting inside of my database on my machine. If I want to take advantage of SharePoint, I can take the data that is contained inside of this application, and that would include from the navigation pane the supporting objects of contacts, filters, and issues, and I can move those lists into SharePoint. The way I do that is by clicking on Move to SharePoint and then browse my way out to where I want to put that. So I'm going to put that onto my local machine. I've got a server here.
And Mike, while you're doing that, we have a question here that is saying that this person is wanting to know how to show a specific data field, and I think that you can probably demonstrate that using SharePoint linking coming up. So I see the question dropped off, but I believe it was showing the assignment rather than the ID. So if you can just include that in your demonstration here, that would be great.
All right. I'm not quite sure I understood the question here.
Basically, he's looking to show specific data out of the list. He wants a view in SharePoint.
In SharePoint, you want to take the data out of SharePoint and attach it here?
No, wants to take this data that we're seeing and just see it as displayed in a specific view in SharePoint. So might just show the view feature.
Okay. What I'm doing here is I'm going out and I'm taking the Move to SharePoint site wizard, which is the button that's up on the top right, and we're clicking on Move to SharePoint. This is going to take the data that's in the SharePoint database itself and move it onto the SharePoint site. So inside demos, that's what our demo is where we're going to put this. Make sure that we got access to that spot, and we're going to put it into the Shared Documents library. And click on Shared Documents and say OK. Click on Next. And what I've got checked here is saving a copy of the database to the SharePoint site and creating a shortcut to it so that people that are out there that want to use the rich client will be able to double-click on the My Issues and be able to open up a copy of the Outlook or the Access database with this information. So at this point here, it's creating the actual lists on the SharePoint site. We've got our issues lists, and it's copying the data on and the properties for each of those columns. And if I were to go back over to my SharePoint site and click on View All Site Content, what I'll find is that I have created 1 minute ago, the issues, the filters, the contacts, and with that, then I can go out and I can view the actual data. So here's my issues list, and you'll see in here is the issue list. Here's the 4 issues, add data for demos. We've got write new content. We've got the additional items in here. If I want to go out and create a new piece of information, I can either do it by clicking on the new item. This is created in SharePoint. And put a status of active. Say OK. And then you can see that it shows up inside of my browser page. And if I were to go out and click on Finish and then refresh, you'll see this was created in WSS. Notice that it automatically pulled in between the two. Yes. Okay. So here's how we have gone through on the issue list on SharePoint and been able to pull in the actual data over here to the SharePoint site. If I go out and I can edit this in a data sheet, I can make changes to things like, for instance, who are these different items assigned to, and we'll put Lynn on for a number of different things. And then you've got who things are opened by. and created by and due dates. And I have access here to save all my changes, and this is actually editing the data inside of the SharePoint environment. So let's go ahead and say enable this content. So by doing that, I'm able to work with that external data and do interesting things. So let's go back into the slide deck here and talk about taking our basic application that's been moved to SharePoint, and let's power it up for use with within the Office system. So the Office system really gives us the ability to do more than just publish data through HTML. Similar to how the Excel services work, we can go out and we can edit the data in a data sheet, and we can do interesting things like that. But we can also take advantage of other things in the Office environment. For instance, Outlook. I can go out and I can collect data and input and bring it in from an email message that we can send out. We can either do a regular HTML type form that people fill out the data sheet, or we could even create an info path form that then we send out and process the data. Other things that we can do is import and export data from XML. If we are doing that, sometimes people have applications where you need to import data periodically, and being able to add reminders or to make it easier to automate that import process, we can do that with the import process as well.
Mike, this is Lynn jumping in here. We're getting a bunch of questions piling up in the queue. Maybe we'll take a minute and answer some of those if that's all right with you.
Okay.
Okay, great. So the first one I see here is, what about relationships between tables and Access? Will they be moved into SharePoint as well? What about constraints?
The tables and the lists that are created inside of Access and the relationship between them, I believe that that's still being enforced inside of the Access or the SharePoint environment. So that is where you've got the lists that are created, and if I was to go back into the sites, the settings for view all site content and look at the lists, and you would see that there's a way we can link those things together.
Great. And then the next one I see here is, how is the Access database handled between more than one user? How is concurrency handled if two users want to change the same data at the same time?
Great question. How about we take a look at that?
Okay.
Let's go back into our demonstration here, because the next piece that we're going to do is talk about going offline and working with the data. Okay. And what happens if we have changes to that data on the client, if we have changes on the server, if we have changes when we're offline. How do we make that all really work and come back together so that we can synchronize and make sure everything is working the way that we would want it to be? So right now I have an application running. I've got my issues up on SharePoint. Inside of Access itself, you'll see that when I'm looking at a given list, I have the opportunity to pull in data from other places. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at how we can get data from other things, such as from email. If I click on the collect data through email, this is going to take me through the process of creating a form that then can be used to distribute out and collect data. You can do it either HTML or as an info path form. We'll go ahead and use info path form, although if the end user that you're getting the data from isn't running Office 2007, this option won't work. You need to work with the HTML form. But for our purposes, I'm going to use the tools that we've got installed. We can create brand new information and get new records, or we could allow end users to update existing information through that info path form. And then we basically can specify what pieces of information we need to collect. I'm going to add the title, I'll add the status, a priority, and an assign to into our list of fields we're going to fill out. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. And then I can specify how we're going to process the the answers to our requests for information. So what's going to happen is we'll create these emails out to potential end users, and when that comes back in, we could automatically process them and add that data directly. But I'm going to do that manually so we can actually step through it. The next step is to determine where our list of end users is going to come from, whether it's emails that are going to be in a field on a database, or in this case, I'm just going to go out and select from my Outlook where I want to send this out. And I'll put a subject on the email message and the related text to fill out and answer that. And we'll go ahead and create that request for information form. And you'll see that it opens up inside of Outlook email a form that is actually embedding InfoPath inside of here. We'll go ahead and send this to Msdn, and I'm going to basically send this off, and we'll wait for some responses. Now, while that is going on, I want to show you one other thing that we can do with this data, and while we're waiting for the email to go through. You'll see up here I have this opportunity to work offline. When I think about working offline, what I'm doing is I can create a local copy of the database that I have on my machine that then I can make changes to. For instance, if I have to get on an airplane or go into some remote area where I don't have internet connection, and I still want to be able to work with this application, I can do that. So right now I'm working offline, and I can go out to my issues, and you can see that we've got our issue list here, and I'm going to create a new issue, client issue, and we can put a category on here. We'll say this is new, we'll put it active, and we could assign it to whatever. But notice that the ID is a -1. What that -1 means is that this was created offline, and so when we go online, it'll actually get the next sequential ID that's available. In the meantime, let's go ahead and close this out, and let's take a look at our online. Here's our online database. I'm going to go out and I'm just going to refresh this page. So we'll come back here and just refresh and make sure that we've got the most recent list of issues. Here's another issue. We'll call this our server-side issue. And we'll save that. And then I'm going to actually go out to this issue number 4, and I'm going to change this. This was changed on the server. And we'll assign it to Bankovich. And then we'll go ahead and our changes are actually saved already into the database. So we've got our server issue. We've got the one that was changed here on the server. Let's go back over to our Outlook and take a look and see if our request for information has come through yet. So let's go ahead and process. And hey, look, hey, here's an open issue. Get data from Outlook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new record from email, and we'll assign this to Bankovich. Status is active. Priority, let's set this to be a low priority, and then I could add more issues if I wanted to. I can delete this one, so let's go ahead and remove that. But then let's go ahead and click on Submit, and then send this, and we'll go ahead and close this out and save it. Yeah. So with that, you'll see that that data has been submitted to the Outlook or into the Access environment. I can take and I can process the data that's out here by right-clicking on that message and saying, let's export that data into Microsoft Access. It shows that there's a new record that's going to be added here, and we'll click OK, and then that goes ahead and processes that data into the database. And in fact, if I go out and open up Access again, and we'll open up our My Issues, you'll see that here is that new record from the email. Here's the one that we created in line.
And I'd like to follow on with that. Glenn has a question from your demo here. It says, if a change is made to the data in the Access form, is the data change then propagated to SharePoint, and then vice versa? So if a change is made in SharePoint, is it propagated back to Access?
Yes, yes, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate here.
Great.
Okay, so stay with me. Remember issue number 4 on the server, we made a server-side change. Well, I'm going to make a client-side change as well. And so inside of Access, my rich client, my offline version of the database, I now have a number of different things I've done. I've changed number 4. Here's my server, my client-side change. I've added the first issue, and I've added the second issue here. So there's my client issue, and here's the new record from email. When I go out to my external data and I go out to work online and synchronize, I'm going to click on synchronize. It's going to take the differences between what I've got on my local copy and what's on the server inside Sharepoint. And it also comes back and says, hey, guess what? There's a conflict between the two. I've already inserted the 2 records, but now I can see that there is that record 4. I have to make a decision. Which version do I want to go with? And so I can say, do you use the client changes that I've got on my client environment, or do I go out and take the version that's on the server? So I discard either one or the other. Okay? So that is how you can basically synchronize the differences between what's online and offline. So I'm going to retry.
That is very cool.
I'm going to retry my changes. Yeah, this is going to then take that information and apply it. And if I go back over to my issues list on SharePoint and refresh this, and let's just, how do we refresh the data? Then it's going to retrieve, and notice that we brought this in. It took my client-side change for the that record. It gave me my new issue, and here's my client issue and the server issue.
Great. Great. Well, there are a couple more questions that follow on to that, so I'm just going to jump into those right now.
Okay.
I've got one here. Is referential integrity, the cascading deletes and updates, maintained in SharePoint or in Access?
Inside of Access, you've got the ability to do those cascading deletes. Inside of SharePoint, what we need to do is work with something different, which is called workflow. And what we'll do is create a trigger that we can then go out and go through the basic cascading type delete trigger that you would have on a regular relational database. Should we do that?
Yeah, that sounds great, because there are 3 or 4 questions on that, so I think people are interested in seeing that.
So let's take a look here. Okay, for instance, we've got the Access and the SharePoint is synchronized between the two. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a column here, and so we'll insert a new column into our version that we've got here online. I'll call this closed. Is this issue closed? And we'll say it's a yes, no value, and we'll go ahead and say, okay, add that. And then I can go over here and I can see that on my list of what's closed, I can bring that over here, and let's just reorder this around here. By the way, did you see how I can click and drag and move these columns around?
Very cool.
Very cool. Not bad for a data sheet. So here's the issues, and here's this new column I created called closed. If I go over to my Access and I click on synchronize, it's going to actually go through and identify within my issues that new column. So if I go over here, where is it? There's my closed column. Notice it synchronized that right up to where I had that issue added. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And if I was to alter this column and remove it or do whatever, the two are going to stay in sync when I click on the synchronize. But what I want to do is when I have a issue that gets marked as closed, I'm going to go and I'm going to change the status of it from active to closed. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because in my issue list report where I've got my open issues, I want to be able to see that report check things off. And the way that we do that is by using workflow. And where do we edit workflow in SharePoint? Lynn?
Where do we add workflow in SharePoint?
Yes.
Well, we can add it into the library itself.
Yep, and we edit that and manage that and design that with the tool that's called Sharepoint Designer, 2007.
Yep.
Use the same exact designer that you would expect for doing anything else with workflow in SharePoint.
And in fact, as Mike gets going here, if you guys are interested in workflow, we'll be having an entire webcast drilling in a lot deeper to workflow coming up in May. So check our series for that.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and I'm going to open up the our site that we're working with here. And I've got HTTP, R2 server, demo, and say open. And here's my my main set of things. I'm going to create something new. I'm going to create a new workflow. and we'll call this our issue closed workflow. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach this to the list of issues inside of SharePoint. We'll automatically start this workflow whenever an item is changed, and click on Next. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a condition saying, okay, well, what is it that we're going to do inside this workflow? So inside the Workflow Designer, I have a list of different kinds of conditions. I can check for values and fields. I can look at date spans or who's doing different things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take an issue field itself, and we're going to take the field of close, that field that we just added, and we're going to say if it's equal to yes, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set another field in the current item, and this would be my status, and we'll set that status equal to closed. And I'll go ahead and click on Finish. If I wanted to add additional workflow steps, by the way, just click on the Add Workflow Steps, and it adds additional steps to what we're processing here. And so there's our workflow. Let's go back into SharePoint here. And what we've got is our list of issues. And so what I want to do is I want to basically go through and take an existing, manage this client-side change, click on the item, and then when you click on refresh the data, what we should see is that is now marked as closed inside of the client. And in fact, if I was to go into my Access client and say we've got our list of issues, notice we have how many issues here? 8 issues that are currently open. Go into our issue list, and let's mark these closed. Add new data for demos, add check schedule, server issue, client issue, save all this, and then go back into our report, and then refresh. Do F5. Actually, I need to click on Work Online. So what we're going to do is we're going to save the changes, and now we'll be online, and it's going to take all of our issues, and now we're going to be running a report off the online data instead of the offline data. Notice we've got a number of different challenges here. We said that it was closed. Go ahead and say, yep, discard my changes. And it's doing our synchronization for us. And the data is now flowing between the two, setting the properties. And what's happening on the server is that workflow that we created to update the status when we click the close checkbox is being fired and run. So let that run. Let's refresh this.
Well, you guys are keeping me busy with questions in the queue. I'm posting the ones that are very general, the answers publicly, and then I'm answering a lot of questions privately as well. So the one I like the most here is we get a comment from Kathy. Wow, cool stuff. So we respond well to praise, so keep them coming.
That's right. So, for instance, if you wanted to add a category or a department field, like for content and announcements, you could then use that to roll up subcategories on your reports and process things. So a lot of this is absolutely possible. Let's see. What is this thing doing now? So it's still setting properties and processing between the two. And we're trying to get back online with the SharePoint here. So while that's going on, how about I take a look at the questions and see?
Great. Yeah, I'm getting overloaded here. You guys are doing a great job asking questions, so jump on in.
All right. Is SharePoint backwards compatible to Office 2003? That's a great question. SharePoint will work with 2003 documents as well as any other type of document you want to upload into it. But to take advantage of things like we're doing with the Access 2007, there's a number of things that are part of 2007 that you would need to have in there working. Do I have to have MOS? In other words, the Office SharePoint services to link to external SQL Server tables and views? And the answer to that is no. all you need to have is the Windows SharePoint services, and that would give you access to all the SQL data. And gosh, it looks like we jumped back to a slide here. Am I back in here? So while this is finishing up, we're now online with SharePoint again. Apologize for the amount of time it's taking to get this done here.
While you're looking at this is a question that's relevant to what you're showing from Ted here. Can you change the conflict resolver to a specific group rather than just sort of generally allowing anyone to resolve conflicts?
So can I, in the workflow, specify, or actually in the conflict resolution window,
yes.
When I'm going online,
Mm-hmm.
what you want to do is be able to restrict who can do the synchronization?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't see why you couldn't create a workflow that would check the credentials of the user who's doing it, and then be able to secure that down, all the way down to a field level.
Mm-hmm. That's the approach I would take too.
So the workflow, I think, would be the place where I would implement that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you have a alternate table or an alternate list that you would write out pending changes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's come back here. You'll notice that everything is finally synchronized up. The changes I made inside of Access to close all those out has completed and is reflected on our SharePoint site. Inside of Access, the report is back from processing, and I opened it back up. Now we only have the one open issue that it remains, and that was our new record from email, and we actually finished that too. So if I was to go and take a look at things that we've closed out, you can take a look and see all of that stuff as well. So, great questions here. I'm going to bring us back to the slides, and let's finish this up. We're actually a little bit ahead of schedule.
Well, we've got lots of questions in the queue here.
We've got lots of questions to talk about.
Yeah.
The questions are, or the point of today's webcast is to show what's possible with Access, show how you can use it as a relatively inexpensive tool to go out and very quickly build applications that are very quickly built, deployed. IT can manage the data because now instead of being on the desktop, we can actually use the link tables feature to link that data directly into SharePoint. You can use all the reporting capabilities and all the visualizations that come with the Outlook or the Access client. Work with multiple data sources. You can work offline. You can get input from email. You can also import and export XML data. We didn't have a chance to get into that. And you can also just go out and design workflow on each item that gets added to your database. So with that, I just want to point out that we are doing this as a series, and so if you want to get to information about downloading and getting to all the rest of the webcasts in this series, we are currently on number 4, and we will be moving on to SharePoint Workflow. I believe that's next week, and then we'll be continuing on down through the tentative plan for all of these.
Yeah, to jump in, Mike, we had several questions about registering for future webcasts, and we're on a monthly schedule, so thanks to those attendees who pointed out to me that the links in your and my blog for the future webcasts are not yet active, and we're going to work very diligently to make sure those links are active as soon as is humanly possible. We do have the series planned out all the way through the end of June, and all the topics are listed there. So for those of you that are wanting to register, we'll be working on that this week, and hopefully we'll get those links to be active later this week. I see a question here that is relevant to your last demonstration. It says, can you access the history of a SharePoint list item in Access?
So inside of SharePoint, we've got versioning and history. Inside Access, I don't think you can. Let's turn this back over to Marcy so she can do the question and answer and talk about it.
Absolutely. Let me jump in here really quickly, and then I'll let you get back to the the stacks of questions that are coming in, I want to give everybody an opportunity before you go away to fill out the survey for 2 reasons, one of which you are automatically entered into a drawing to win a Microsoft Zune. So you'll want to fill out the survey simply for that reason. And in addition, it is your chance to give us your comments and feedback with regards to this webcast and MSDN Webcast in general. We really do appreciate any comments and feedback you might have in order to bring you the webcast content that you need to do your job. All right, so back to you for questions.
Okay. Okay, so lots of questions out here. And Lynn, you've been working on trying to answer a lot of these?
Yeah, I've been answering, believe it or not, as many as is possible, but I see we're up to 12. So be patient. We're going to get to as many as we can. Do you want to just start from the top, Mike, and then I'll start from the bottom, and we'll kind of switch off?
How about I work from the bottom?
You work from the bottom.
You're currently on the top?
Okay, yep, and I'll start from the top.
Okay.
I've got from CJ here, how do you create a list that links to an external SQL table or view? And I assume that means from inside of SharePoint. You set the list column to an external data source. And it's pretty simple. It's a no-code type solution. So inside of SharePoint, assuming you're using Windows authentication, which is the default in SharePoint, and then you use your source SQL table or view and select the particular column. So it's pretty straightforward to do.
I've got a question here. Can we use Excel 2007 to do the same? And I assume that means to edit the data. And the answer is yes. You can use Excel 2007 to edit the data. Absolutely. Your turn.
Okay, so from Kathy, if a client sends an Excel spreadsheet that is currently an ugly import into Access, can I use the Outlook data collection somehow? You could, but I would be more inclined if you have it available to use InfoPath. And the reason that I would is because InfoPath allows you to add more validation to your form without writing any code. And InfoPath allows you to write code to your form should you need to do something more sophisticated. So I guess my answer would be it depends on the level of sophistication. You could possibly use Outlook data collection, but I would tend to use InfoPath. Mike, do you agree on that?
Yeah. When I read that question, I was thinking that it has to do with, how do you define what the data links are, the translations of the data. If you go out into Access 2007, you click on the import process, it brings this out to a place where you can actually specify all the transformation, the XSL, for how the data is actually mapped out. And that you can do directly from an XML import. Yeah. I've got a question here about the upgrade path. And it says historically, the upgrade path has been from Access to SQL Server. So, would you still do that, or when would you go to SharePoint? And it seems like the SharePoint structure is somewhat, how does that impact in performance and things like that? The thing about SharePoint is it gives you the collaborative tools for working with this data pretty directly. And while you can still do the upgrade of Access databases into SQL 2000 or in SQL 2005, and it just creates the linked table the same way it does to SharePoint. SharePoint gives you a kind of an interim, another way of providing access to that data to other members of your team. So I guess if you're looking for an application that's going to be still primarily running Access and you just want to be able to use those Access forms and reports, I would say go to SQL Server. If you're looking for making this available through other channels, other mechanisms, other ways, look at MOS, look at the Windows SharePoint services. Okay,
great. And I see a question from Henrik from Denmark, and I have to say good dag to you because I speak a little bit of that language. It says, will the reports from Access be uploaded to WSS as well? And are there any requirements besides WSS 3.0? And Mike, you can jump in here if I'm not giving a complete answer, but my understanding is in order to use Access reports in WSS, you'd have to convert them to SharePoint reports and then use the SharePoint report viewer. I'm not aware of any direct methodology to display Access reports.
No, but there is a way that you can convert from Access reports to report services.
Yeah, it's just a right-click import.
Right, and what you do is you go out to the report services and import those reports. And so if they're looking for doing that, then you need to set up on your SharePoint environment the SQL Server Report Services integration, and then you could run that through there.
which is a couple of web parts that are freely downloadable.
Yep, and you can get that from the web parts and then have the report viewer and map that out to how things are going to work.
Okay.
Let's post that one. The SQL Express is not a better solution than Access 2007. So the question is shouldn't they be using SQL Express if it's a small group of users instead of Access? And the answer, this is from Elias, SQL Express is a relational tool. What Access gives you is instead of having to write using Visual Studio or some other tool, a front-end application, you can bundle the whole thing into one Access application. And that's historically what Access has done for managing data across small groups and whatever. I like SQL Express an awful lot, and I tend to recommend that people will go out and invest in building that custom front-end application. But if they don't want to do that, or they have other reasons to, like for instance, an investment in Access at this point, they can always upgrade their Access databases to 2007 and then use this as an excellent way to make it more available through a thin client.
And kind of a follow-on from SP Logic, is the report building wizard interface in Access 2007 actually the reporting services report editor? No, they're actually two separate things. However, the design of the report wizard interface in Access was considered when the SQL 2005 report wizard was created. So they look visually similar, and that's actually to make it easier for you as developers to more quickly develop prototype reports. But they output two different things. In SQL Server, you're outputting an XML dialect, or it's a RDL language, and in Access, of course, it's specific to Access. As we did say, though, earlier, if you do move to the SQL Server environment, in the report building interface, there is the option to right-click and import Access reports and convert them to RDL. Mike?
Yes? Are you asking me a question, or are you just...
It's your turn.
My turn?
It's your turn.
All right. So let's see. My question here is we'd like to add a category or content field, like category or department, for every list, and then be able to lock down security so that users would only be able to see that category or that department. And you would do that inside of the security access for Access, and you can also apply that inside of Sharepoint, locking down particular users and groups to particular fields and columns.
All right. I see a very broad question from Hassan here. What do we not get in terms of features with Access 2003 and WSS3 or MOS? So I think, if I understand the question, is what do we get in Access 2007 that we did not get in Access 2003? And I think Mike probably is more qualified to answer that question than I am.
So which one is this?
This is what are the feature changes in Access 2003 versus 7 in terms of integration with Sharepoint or WSS?
From Access to did Access 2003 interface with Sharepoint 2?
I didn't work with it. So
it wasn't. So everything in this release is new for integrating into the
synchronization. I know is new.
Synchronization. You get the collect data by email.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two of the big ones that come to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
The synchronization, the publish to XPS, imports and exports. So I guess that's the ones I'm thinking of.
Okay. I see a question here from John that looks like it's very specific to his implementation. So I'll just ask John to send me an email, lynnl, Lynnl, @microsoft.com, and then I will answer your question more specifically over email.
So what function in workflow can a user call to synchronize? In other words, is there an Access synchronize module that you need to go out and call that you can get to that logic? The logic is inside of the Access application itself to do the synchronization, and the reason why is that as the end user, I'm going offline. I'm running my offline version of this application inside of Access offline. When I go and do the synchronization, that's running that synchronization from the Access client, the offline piece, and it's going up and it's connecting to the online database and comparing and seeing what's different between the two. So that would all run from within the Access itself. And inside of the scripting of Access, you can get to being able to trigger that either from a button or some other form that you might put together as like a dashboard to say, okay, let's take this offline, let's put it back online, and actually go through running that.
Okay, the next question I see is the Fantastic 40. We get 20 .stp files when we use SharePoint lists as tables. Would you use Access 2007 reports or SQL 2005 reporting services? For those of you not familiar with the Fantastic 40, those are the freely downloadable SharePoint site templates, or the WSS site templates. And just as a general rule for production environments, I would generally use SQL Server 2005 reporting services because you have a greater extensibility. However, it is going to depend on the size of your environment, the skills of your developers, and the particular business needs. But my tendency would be to lean towards SQL 2005 reporting services.
I would say the same thing. That's exactly what I was thinking. Can I use SharePoint tables linked to Access on my Pocket PC or my Windows mobile device? If you take that question and you say, okay, I want to synchronize and write a custom application that uses the SQL Compact Edition and then synchronize data and write an application for it, you can do that. But one other way that I can get to that Access data is to browse out to the site and then open up the data in the pages directly from SharePoint as a web page, because that will work on the mobile device.
I see kind of a specific question from Jim O, and again, I'm going to send him my email address. So I'll ask Jim O to just send me this question over email.
Okay. And then providing a link to SQL Report Services. I'll find a link and post that here, George. Just a second.
Okay, and while he's looking for that, let's see, we got from Ted here. Do you need to use report service to import Access reports in a MOS web part? Will this only import static data or the linking between tables and logic? Oh, that's a great question. The way that the import works is there's a translation done between the Access report definition into the XML dialect for SQL reporting services, which is the RDL, or the report definition language. And although I haven't had a huge amount of production experience with this, I have played with it quite a bit when I was an instructor before I joined Microsoft. And what I found is, as you'd probably expect, the simpler the report definition and Access, the better the import. Generally, the constraints and the data structure information will come in just fine. If you've done some custom VBA or something in your Access report, that doesn't always translate directly. But the wizard does a pretty good job picking up the basic structure. Okay, Mike, you still looking for that link?
I'm looking for the link. So
okay, so got another question here from Henrik. What about the constraints and indexes from Access? How are they published to SharePoint? Again, it's an under-the-hood XML translation. Metadata in SharePoint is generally translated via XML. This is not something that's going to be visible to you, but that's how the information is translated, and of course all that information is then stored in the SQL Server content databases for SharePoint. So I think, Mike, once you get this last question, you guys have made us work for our money today. Hopefully we'll see a lot of you back for the next installment, which is going to be on Friday, where we'll be doing part 3. What is the topic, Mike, again?
What is the topic?
I honestly can't remember.
I believe we're doing workflow.
Workflow is following Friday.
Okay, so this Friday is going to be customizing your SharePoint site with a custom master page, and basically taking an existing website and doing a proof of concept inside of SharePoint. And I found the link for the SharePoint report services add-in to SharePoint Technologies, and I'll post that out there.
Great.
And check this out. And I think they're all cleared out.
Great. Well, we really appreciate everybody's attention. Oh, thanks. And we like the positive comments at the end. So keep on coming back and asking those questions, and hopefully we're helping you to become more productive SharePoint developers.
And enjoy, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks so much. A special round of applause for Lynn and Michael. Thank you for your time and your presentation. This does conclude the audio portion of our webcast, so if you've dialed in, you can go ahead and disconnect, but we do hope you'll stay logged in and take a moment to complete the survey currently on your screen. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.